Speaking of, since you brought it up, and the bus and the Rhodes family, and
What did I bring up?
well, people working together and etc. Have you seen this where the AEW fans are just applauding and just over the moon because one of the new uppity up big wigs, the head honchos, some lady, can't remember her name, in Warner Brother Discovery conglomerate company, said, oh yeah, AEW does good ratings for us. So what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to develop some other programming with AEW that doesn't take place in a ring.
And this is the first step to, we want a relationship like USA Network has with their wrestling show. We want to submit ideas to you. That's the next step.
Well, besides that, they haven't figured this out either. They have not, just like Shitstain couldn't ever figure it out. People that don't want to watch wrestling are not going to watch wrestlers do other shit besides wrestling. And people who don't want to watch wrestling are not going to watch a wrestling show just because you're doing stupid and or comedic and or outside of wrestling shit that the wrestling fans doesn't like. I used to hear this all the time from Shitstain. Well, the wrestling fans, they're going to watch the show regardless. They're already watching. They're not going anywhere, so we can just do all this other stupid shit to get other people to watch. Well, what happened? The wrestling got so fucking bad that a bunch of people decided, yeah, we're going to quit watching it. Millions over the last 20 years since this whole thing started. And they have not yet realized that besides the fact that people who don't like wrestling aren't going to watch a wrestling program just because there's entertaining shit on the wrestling program, but people who like wrestling are not going to watch wrestlers goddamn cook in the kitchen. The most devoted people will watch anything, but seriously, they have a program that produces ratings for them. So they want to take people on that program and have them do completely different shit than they do on that program, and they think people will watch that. And again, yeah, there's going to be some people that's going to watch any fucking thing. But they ought to try to start fixing their fucking wrestling program and making more fans of that, and then they might have a better chance. Because, again, we went through this because Daniel Cormier was the special guest referee at the Fight Pit match. Does that mean that every UFC fan and every MMA fan decided to watch that one wrestling show because he was on it doing something other than what they like to watch him do? Or...
But who's your problem with?
But the Logan Paul thing. Yes, Logan Paul gets a lot of attention and a lot of publicity, and he's been very good at wrestling. But do all of Logan Paul's fans from his YouTube channel, do they all suddenly flock to see him involved in wrestling? Not really, because elsewise, they'd do 5 million more viewers whenever the goddamn guy showed up on TV, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and it would be an interesting study if you take any proven drawing card across any combat sport or anything like this and see how many people buy an event versus how many social media followers they have, so you could try to figure out what the actual conversion rate is. It's probably incredibly small. It has to be incredibly small for any of these people that have a lot of followers. I asked you before, who do you have a problem with? Do you have a problem with the network for saying they want this, or do you have a problem with Tony for saying, okay, I mean, if the network's asking for this, I need a good relationship with the network. I got to kind of give them what they want.
But the problem is what they want. They don't understand wrestling or wrestling fans. What was the ratings for Rhodes to the Top? At the time, they were doing half to a third of the number of people watching AEW when Cody was actually on the AEW show, right? So yes, there's some interest, but it's not going to do the ratings of another wrestling program. And then imagine if the wrestling program they were already doing was good. They need to make more fans for their fucking program instead of worrying about, again, I just hear this I heard it in the WWE. You hear it from every television network. Yeah, we want to take the people on this program and then put them in something else that's not anything similar to the program that people are watching. We think people will watch that.
But is Tony stuck? Is Tony in a position where he has to say yes?
Well, probably. But again, that's the, television networks owning or operating or manipulating wrestling. Let's get all the fucking wrestlers on this program and get them to do anything else but. That's the.
It is interesting, too, because you have reality shows that are wrestler-based, like the Diva shows and the Miz and Mrs. And whatever numbers those do, and I think the Bellas one did pretty good for E, but there's never been any sign that there was a conversion of that audience to a pay-per-view buyer, whatever that means, or someone who's going to go subscribe to Peacock to see the Bellas wrestle, using them as an example. And that's wrestler-based reality content.
Well, and just remember Ali Inoki, because the concept was, my God, all the boxing fans will want to see it. And Ali was the biggest athlete in the world. And then obviously Inoki in Japan, which they did. Everybody in Japan wanted to see, it did monster television ratings. Like 2/3 of the country in Japan saw it on television. Here, nobody gave a shit because nobody knew who Inoki was. And the boxing fans didn't want to see Ali not box. So it flopped. I'm just saying that's the business has much bigger problems than whether or not we can develop a reality show starring Darby Allin or whatever the fuck, where every week he tries to figure out another way to break his fucking neck and hospitalize himself for free. And a third or whatever percentage of the people already watching AEW is going to watch that. And meanwhile, the people watching actual wrestling programs continues overall to shrink, because even if WWE's kind of hanging in there steady, the AEW program is constricting because they've lost their stars, and we'll talk about one of them in a second, but they've lost their stars and everybody's hurt and booking is a shambles. And the fringe people that were watching it for the points in time where it would impersonate a mainstream wrestling program, when they'd have a Punk or a Danielson and something big, they're dropping out because there's no more Punk. Danielson's buried. MJF is a highlight, but what else are we looking forward to these days? So
that's the problem with AEW right now, ratings-wise. There's nothing that holds people. People will tune in to see what's there, and depending on what's there, they'll either tune out fast, which I think was what happened this week. Again, it's a different night because you had all the it was a Tuesday, and you also had a lot of competition, but you also started with the best friends. And people weren't like, hey, let's check this out. They were there at the start, and then they jumped off the ship.
And, so anyway, I wish them well with all their reality shows where all of the indie-minded outlaw wrestlers that want to be TV stars and can't even fucking produce in a wrestling program yet will get to live out their fantasies that people actually give a shit what they do in their spare time.